Welcome back. Today we are going to be continuing with the subject of non-binary. To do so, we're going to be responding to a video made by Marina Shut Up. So let's just dive right in.
One question I see asked a lot is non-binary a thing?
That question is quite vague, but in short, is it a thing? Yes, it's a thing. Now, to avoid being strawmanned, do I think it's a thing as in a gender? No, I do not believe non-binary is a gender. Is it a thing that has been created and others have embraced? Yes. Is there some subtle meaning here and there and everywhere? Possibly.
I've been seeing a lot of, debates by usually cisgender people about whether or not non-binary people are real and valid.
There's nothing wrong with people discussing or debating whether or not non-binary is in fact a gender. Discussion is good. It helps us to understand, learn, and improve.
And I just have a question. Why are you so interested in something that doesn't affect you?
I can apply that question to a lot of things in life that doesn't affect me, but I'm interested in. The answer? Because I want to understand, and if possible, correct a few wrongs.
Why?
Well, as you're confused, I'll give you this answer instead. The reason I want to understand is because
I have downs.
First off, why are you debating other people's identity instead of, talking to them?
Because quite a number have made it quite clear they are not interested in discussions, which is disappointing because it would be nice to try and understand from the other perspective of someone who identifies as non-binary. Some block. I am personally blocked by quite a number of people even though I've never interacted with them, and most of my tweets, if anything, are just sexually suggestive, so I don't really offend people's identities much.
Listening to their perspectives?
I make it a point to listen to what they have to say before I decide whether or not I intend to respond to somebody who is trying to talk about the non-binary as a gender.
Trying to understand where they're coming from?
I do try, but unfortunately quite a number of those that I have watched videos on flip-flop their gender identity so much that I don't actually know what they are, unless of course they wish to change their species to chameleon, which would make it a lot simpler.
But instead I keep seeing people who are not non-binary arguing that being non-binary isn't a real thing.
Did you expect people who identified as non-binary to be having those arguments?
And I'm just like, why are you so obsessed with policing other people's gender?
Understanding why they believe non-binary is a gender is not the same as policing people's gender identity. No one is trying to police it, just trying to understand it and, if possible, correct it. With evidence.
It doesn't hurt you, it doesn't affect your everyday life, and I trust that people know themselves better than you do.
Which is why it is a shame that so many people block others so that discussions cannot be had. I don't doubt that they understand themselves better than I could, or do. I only question their gender identity because there is very little in the way of proof that it is in fact a gender at all.
Why do you care so much about disproving an aspect of someone's identity?
Because if it is something that can be disproved and therefore proven to be not real, those that are trying to legitimize it by continuing to add it to their own identity and pushing the narrative that it is something that exists will have to take a step back and reevaluate, because some of these people who do this have quite sizable audiences. Rather interestingly, some of the people who do push non-binary as a gender use evidence for things like trans identity and medication and studies to support certain trans-related subjects, but none for non-binary.
Who fucking cares? It's none of your business!
And this is one of the wonderful things about being a channel that focuses somewhat on social commentary. I am addressing the individual and their idea, not a whole group of people or attacking the person. Quite a number of people I know do attack people. I'm not one of them. I am interested in that person and what they have to say. So I address them, not an entire group.
And I don't mean to say that you shouldn't care about people's gender and you shouldn't respect their gender, because you absolutely should. And to a lot of people, figuring out their gender identity is a really long and difficult process. So I totally get why gender would be important to people.
I can agree that gender and respecting someone's gender is important. I do not respect the idea that I have to memorize umpteen thousand whatever pronouns and have to continually ask someone what they are identifying as or their gender pronouns are, which might as well happen every day depending on what mood they're in, because their gender seems to be fluid. This needs to be color coordinated with a mood ring so I can easily understand, but I still shouldn't have to make concessions.
This is not completely comparable, but as a bisexual person who spent over 10 years trying to figure out my orientation and put a lot of thought into it, I will get people who watch one of my videos and literally think about bisexuality for 2 seconds, and they'll be like, I don't think she's really bisexual.
If you don't mind me asking, what is there to figure out? You've already stated you are bisexual. Did you believe bisexuality was a stepping stone or something?
How about you can't have an opinion on my own sexuality until you've thought about it for as long as I have. Why don't you talk to me in 10 plus years?
I would love to address this video in 10 years' time, but I have a strange feeling all the people serving me as I will be the inevitable ruler of this world and would have killed most of humanity by then will be telling me, Omegon, it's been like 10 years, bruv. We're all men here and the women are in the kitchen. Why does it matter about non-binary? Why does it matter about sexuality? Women are objects, not subjects, and we are the subjects. That's going to piss someone off.
Something about the way that non-binary and trans conversations are framed in certain spheres of YouTube and on Twitter and just general conversations I've seen, it really reminds me of 2008 when Prop 8 was a thing and it passed. And conservative commentators on Fox News and the internet and all over the place were having these debates about whether or not being gay was a sin.
If you think the discussions had on Twitter in certain spheres of the internet, which I think would be the spheres that I am closely associated with, are interesting, you should see the discussions on Discord by people who have their own servers that are themselves trans. They are fascinating, and I'm on a few of those servers. And according to quite a number of religious texts, homosexuality is in fact a sin. There's no debate on that. There, however, should be a separation of church and state, so there should be no laws enforcing religious views.
That was the way that discourse was framed. There was no room for nuance. There was no room to talk about the many LGBTQ issues. It was literally just framed as a real valid thing, or are gay people just choosing to be degenerates?
I do get the point you are trying to make. However, homosexuality, unlike non-binary, is something that can be proven to be true, real, exist, something.
Which really sucks when you can't have a conversation about anything without even, people agreeing that the topic you're discussing is real.
For something to be real, it has to be proven to be true. Problem with your comparison is you're comparing it to a bunch of dogmatic idiots that live their lives partially in accordance to their religious ideals, which are not true. No science can prove God exists, and at this present time there is nothing to prove that non-binary exists. It is, much like believing in a God, a feeling.
So if you're someone who in 2017 is debating about the existence of non-binary people, you definitely remind me of 2008 conservatives.
Which is the terrible comparison to make. One is vastly more complicated, the other is not at all. People are debating whether non-binary people exist. No. They're debating whether non-binary is a gender. The people themselves exist. It's the gender they're curious about, and they're discussing, debating with themselves within one area because quite a large number of people who identify as non-binary are not engaging with the discussion.
Who were arguing about whether or not being gay was a sin.
Being gay is in fact a sin. But as earlier stated, no government should legislate to make that sin punishable by law. And anyone who is practicing their sin should have all the freedoms and rights of anyone else in this country. And in your country.
Anyway, I am not non-binary, and I am in no way an authority. And I hope that I'm not speaking over people, and if I am, please call me out.
If you, Marina, ever see this video, I would like you to respect my pronouns and gender identity now. See, I identify as a lightsaber, and these sounds are my pronouns. I just wanted to add this in here.
I love a good call out of myself. And I really do have qualms because I think my voice should not matter in this conversation because I'm not non-binary. But I have a platform, and I think it's important to uplift other creators because I don't think people are listening to firsthand information enough. And I'm seeing too many people outside of, like, the non-binary community.
There's a non-binary community?
Arguing about their existences. And it's like, how about you just let people live their lives and not argue about their existence?
I am quite content to go about my life and never question anyone else's existence. When they then tell me what their existence is and expect me to respect it, then there is a problem.
But whatever. I feel like a lot of these problems arise from people not listening to non-binary people. And it's really not that hard.
Again, this is something I can agree with. Listening to someone else is not hard. It does get a little difficult when there are some very obvious visible traits that just draw your attention, like a massive mole on someone's face or a gigantic Adam's apple, which I know is a running old joke that no one should continue making, but seriously, Voldemort's still alive.
Just listen and be open-minded, and maybe you'll learn something.
I do quite a lot of listening. What would be nice would be to have those discussions, because while people think that debate is boring or shouldn't bother to happen, we should simply listen and believe another person and their ideas. I do believe engaging in discussion to understand both sides to an argument or position over a subject like gender is productive. Yes, I know there are limitations to discussion, but I still believe those discussions should happen. I am one of those people who believes in absolute freedom of speech after all. Anyway, thank you all for listening.